A kind and soothing tone emanated from her as she extended her hand and put it securely on mine. "Undoubtedly, I am content, sweetheart. I absolutely adore having sex with you," she said. At that moment, she paused. Before proceeding, cast a fleeting glance in Michael's direction. "To put it simply, I think it would be a good idea for both of us to experiment with something that is different. Is vast, making it the ideal location for holding huge events, and each year we put on quite a feast for the whole neighborhood's residents to enjoy. A long-standing custom of ours is to extend invitations to all of our neighbors, even those with whom we do not generally interact throughout the course of the year." The cookout had been a success, as it often is. There was an abundance of delicious food, some laughing, and a laid-back attitude. According to all reports, it was yet another event that was successful. Now, after a few days had passed, it was a Sunday afternoon that was casual and relaxed. First thing in the morning, my wife Emily and I had been out and about doing errands. Before heading back to our house, we had first gone shopping and then had lunch at the shopping center. I had nothing else planned for the day, so I was looking forward to a relaxing afternoon in front of the television instead of doing anything else. To me, the thought of settling onto the sofa and burying myself in a game or movie seemed like the ideal way to wrap off the weekend on a high note. But, as fate would have it, the doorbell rang just as I was about to settle down and make myself comfortable. I let out a moan and began to get up, but Emily had already taken action and was nearly halfway to the entrance. I decided to follow her in order to find out who it was. The sight of Michael Diaz standing on our doorstep came as a complete surprise to me when Emily unlocked the door before me. The barbecue was attended by him and his wife, Lily, despite the fact that we did not often engage with them outside of those activities that took place in the neighborhood. I always felt a little bit suspicious around them, despite the fact that they were courteous and nice during events. The fact that Michael and Lily were known to be members of a swingers club in the city was a lifestyle choice that I myself could not comprehend or agree with. Indeed, it was not anything that I held against them in particular. Nevertheless, it prevented me from developing a genuine connection with them. The end effect was that our connection was friendly but not particularly close. Michael seemed to be standing there with a relaxed grin on his face, his hands tucked into his pockets as if he had all the time in the world. I couldn't help but wonder why he had dropped by and what this unexpected visit would entail for our normally calm Sunday afternoon. It wasn't often that we had guests who came without prior notice, so I couldn't help but wonder why he had stopped by. Emily smiled warmly at Michael as she welcomed him and instantly invited him inside, as she did not want to give the impression that she was unpleasant. Upon entering the living room, I extended a warm greeting to him and motioned for him to have a seat. Soon after, Emily inquired as to whether Michael would be interested in having a drink. The news came as a surprise to me. Beer, or any other kind of alcoholic beverage, was never something that we had in the home. It was common knowledge that when guests came around for drinks, they would bring their own, or I would make a hasty trip to the shop a few streets away to get some for them. On the other hand, having it easily accessible, it was not typical at all. Following Michael's acceptance of her offer, Emily vanished into the kitchen and reappeared a few moments later with a drink for him as well as a beer for me. While I was still a little perplexed, I expressed my gratitude to her, and I was even more taken aback when she sat down next to me on the sofa. If we were in the presence of other people, Emily would normally leave me to engage in man talk and look for something else to do. On the other hand, her body language today gave the impression that she was both engaged and little apprehensive. She was leaning forward and her posture was slightly tense. After settling onto the armchair, which was positioned at an angle to the sofa, Michael did not waste any time in getting to the point without any hesitation. "James," he started out by offering a grin. "I am certain that you are aware of the rumors that spread about Lily and I." I opened my lips, prepared to comment in a courteous manner on the need of not listening to gossip. However, Michael continued on before I had the opportunity to say anything. "To tell you the truth, such rumors are accurate. A swingers club is something that Lily and I are both members of, and we have been participating in it for close to a year now. To tell you the truth, it has been outstanding for us. A whole new facet has been introduced to our relationship as a result of the profound love that we have for one another. Every time, it is carried out with the agreement of both parties and complete openness. In addition, if we are being really honest, it has brought us closer together each and every time we return from the club. Our feelings for one another are stronger than they have ever been. The level of candor that he displayed surprised me. When a neighbor publicly disclosed something that was so intimate and unorthodox, it was not something that happened every day. During the time that I was processing his comments, I couldn't help but peek over at Emily, who seemed to be paying an abnormally high level of attention. Her attitude was thoughtful but inscrutable. Obviously, this was not going to be the kind of Sunday that I had expected to spend resting. "You, Michael." The tone of my voice was more forceful than I had wanted it to be. I had no desire to listen to it any longer. To tell you the truth, I was not remotely interested in the specifics of his personal life. The language that he was using in front of Emily was quite offensive to me, and I did not enjoy it. I could feel a trace of annoyance creeping into my tone. "No matter what you and your wife decide to do, I truly don't care about it. Could you possibly have come over for any other reason?" Michael made a sign of peace by gently raising his hand above his head. "Keep your cool, James. I can see that you are unhappy, but that is not the reason why I am here. It is not my intention to provoke anger in you." "If that is the case, then why are you here?" I inquired. My patient showed signs of exhaustion. There was a little pause before he responded to the question. To put it simply, Emily approached us while we were having the barbecue and asked us a few questions. It is all that. The impact of his remarks was like a bolt of lightning struck me. As I turned to face Emily, I was utterly taken aback. When she looked at me, her cheeks began to pink slightly, and she smiled in a way that suggested she was sheepish. Emily and I had tied the knot when we were both in our early 30s. I was a definite bachelor with no real aspirations to settle down before meeting her. I had no intention of ever getting married. There was a time when Emily was engaged to someone, but her fiancé broke off the engagement once she found out that she was unable to have children. At the time when I first met her, none of it mattered to me. As soon as I met him, I fell in love with him. I had no interest in giving birth to children. I was just interested in her. While I was having a hard time processing what Michael had just said, he spoke out once again, his tone remaining calm but still forceful. "James, you may not seem to be that startled. This type of stuff is something that a lot of married couples investigate. It has been a means by which Lily and I have been able to improve our connection." While I was still trying to make sense of what was going on, I cast a peek in Emily's direction. To be more specific, what was it that she inquired about Michael and Lily at the barbecue, and why did she do so? A Sunday that had been quite uneventful had all of a sudden become something for which I had not been even slightly prepared. My irritation was growing with each word that Michael uttered, and I could feel it swelling up. My tolerance for this discourse was running thin, and I was rapidly coming to the realization that I liked him less and less to begin with. In a tone that was almost condescending, he continued to speak to James. "Are you sure you don't want to see Emily smiling?" I raised my head to look at Emily, who had been rather quiet up until this point. The emotion on her face was difficult to decipher, but I needed more clarity. "What's wrong with you while you're making love to me?" I addressed her squarely, my tone colored with both pain and perplexity as I asked her the question. A kind and soothing tone emanated from her as she extended her hand and put it securely on mine. "Undoubtedly, I am content, sweetheart. I absolutely adore having sex with you," she said. At that moment, she paused. Before proceeding, cast a fleeting glance in Michael's direction. "To put it simply, I think it would be a good idea for both of us to experiment with something that is different. As you may know, with another individual. Simply for the sake of variety, that is all. Is it not clear to you? Only sexual matters would be discussed. In no way would it imply that we do not love one another. Our marriage could even become more robust as a result of this. The words that she said struck me like a blow to the liver. Before I could react, Michael jumped in once again, and it was obvious that he was attempting to sell the notion. He remixed to James, think of it this way, while leaning forward slightly over his shoulder. Suppose Emily had a passion for dancing and she wanted to experiment with a wide range of dance styles, but you were only able to perform one of those dance styles. Do you not think it would be beneficial for her to have fun by dancing with other partners who could show her the rest of the place? At first, I didn't even hesitate. No, Michael, I would not do that. In response, I spoke with a forceful tone. I would anticipate that Emily would teach me new dances if she desired to learn them, so that we might take pleasure in performing them together. In reaction to my statement, Michael leaned back, seeming temporarily taken aback. My hand was softly grasped by Emily, but I was unable to determine if she was expressing agreement, disappointment, or just an effort to alleviate the tension through her gesture. I was positive of one thing, regardless of the purpose of this talk or the goals it was intended to achieve. But I wasn't going to purchase it. Michael was able to obtain a clear understanding from my facial expression that his efforts were not yielding any results. It was clear that I was angry, and it was also clear that I was not going to agree to go to a swingers club with my wife. He then shifted his attention to Emily, who gave a little frown on her face. An expression of dissatisfaction could be seen across her face. Okay, Michael replied with a shrug on his face. With a glance in her way, we made an attempt. With a smirk on his face, he got up from his seat and smiled briefly. At the same time that he extended his hand toward me, he said, "No hard feelings, old friend." My anger was rising to the surface, but I chose to ignore the gesture. I stepped between him and Emily as I made my way to the entranceway and addressed him in a harsh manner, saying, "I'll show you to the door." I gave the door a solid swing behind him as soon as he passed the threshold, and I was almost completely successful in closing it. I turned around and headed back into the living room, where Emily was still standing with her arms crossed in a relaxed manner. The tone of her voice was protective when she responded, "You didn't have to be so abrupt. I requested that he come over and have a conversation with you. For what length of time have you been experiencing fantasies about having sexual encounters with other men as well?" I inquired with a determined tone. Afterward, before she could give me a response, I hastily added, "They are nothing more than fantasies, aren't they? In all honesty, you haven't accomplished anything, or have you?" The expression on her face changed somewhat, and she responded with a strong, "Of course not. That is something I would never do. I am sure you are aware of it." Her tone became more kind as she sighed. I wanted him to come over because of this reason. Simply put, I believed that someone who had more expertise might provide a more suitable explanation. To be honest, I'm sorry. To put it simply, forget about it all. Although I had the impression that it would be a great activity for us to experiment with, I can see that it is not for you. As soon as she finished speaking, she shifted her attention to the kitchen and slung a brief parting insult over her shoulder. "Go watch anything you want to watch on television, whether it be golf or something else. I'm going to get supper started." As she went into the next room, I remained there for a few while, processing everything that had just occurred. The tension was still heavy in the air as she left. There was no way that I could have just returned to the sofa and pretended that nothing had occurred. On the contrary, I went upstairs and began packing my belongings. As soon as Emily saw that I wasn't watching television, she went upstairs to check on me. By that time, I had almost completed what I was doing. While I was putting the finishing touches on the garment bag that was lying on the bed, a suitcase had already been zipped up. The expression that she wore on her face as she entered the bedroom was one that was a combination of astonishment and dread. "What exactly are you doing?" Anxiety caused her voice to shake as she uttered the question. As I concluded my sentence, I repeated it in a chilly tone, "I'm making it easy for you to have sex with as many guys as you want." I did not look at her. Almost immediately, tears began to well up in her eyes. "Oh my goodness, please don't do it. Be careful," she urged, her voice cracking as she pleaded with you. "Never in my life have I cheated on you. Never in my life, I swear. You have my love. I solemnly swear that I will never again bring up anything similar to that. Kindly, do not go from here. You have my love." At long last, I turned around to face her. While my heart is heavy, my determination is strong. My wife and I have been married for 7 years, and I can state without a doubt that I have never even entertained the idea of being with another woman. Are you aware of the reason? It's because I took the promises we made to one another seriously. When I said that I do, I was making a promise to love, honor, and cherish you until the day that we both breathe our last breath. Additionally, I have adhered to that promise on a daily basis. Her tears began to fall, but I kept on with my speech. By limiting the ultimate expression of his love for you to nothing more than sexual activity, how can you show your spouse that you respect him, if you are so prepared to share the intimacy that is supposed to be holy between a husband and wife with a stranger? How can you possibly love the closeness that is meant to be sacred between them? Emily, I adore you with every single beat of my heart. Most likely, I will always do so. The corner of her mouth trembled as she attempted to form words, but I was not finished. My demand, however, is for the whole bundle. It is not enough to just be motivated by love. It is necessary for it to include both the honor and the cherishing. Today, I realized that I had lost it, or at the very least, I had lost it. Nevertheless, honey, she managed to pull through the tears, and I did nothing at all. Since we were married, I have never been with another guy outside of my husband. I am aware of it, I said, my tone becoming more subdued but still unwavering. In addition, I am grateful for it, without a doubt. However, there are times when, Emily, it is not the action that matters but the idea that matters. My perspective shifts as a result of what you were willing to take into consideration and what you wanted us to take into consideration. Despite the fact that her tears were falling more heavily, I continued on. Tomorrow, I will initiate the divorce procedures by contacting our attorney to begin the process. I would want for you, Emily, to have 50% of everything. Regarding you, I continue to care. And I really want for you to have joy. It is my sincere wish that you may one day meet someone to whom you can devote your whole and utter devotion. The reason for this is that love is wonderful, but without dignity and respect, there is no basis, and there is no hope. I turned around and left the room, leaving her alone with the burden of what had been lost. She slumped into the bed and began crying violently as I left the room. It turned out that the divorce was a lot more difficult than either of them had expected it would be. Emily, who was adamant about preserving the marriage, participated in every single one of the hearings. Despite the fact that the court ordered many therapy sessions in an effort to bring them together and address their disagreements, James's determination did not waver any. Emily pleaded and promised to change throughout each session, while James stuck by his choice in a calm but resolute manner. Each session was an emotional battleground. On one occasion, he conveyed to the counselor that it was not about hatred or wrath. Despite the fact that I still adore her, something broke, and I can't pretend that it didn't happen. Being in a marriage that does not have that basis makes me feel as like I am living a lie, and I refuse to live in such a way. Emily was in utter disbelief. In spite of her early attempts to delay the divorce, she soon had little choice but to come to terms with the fact that James would not be returning. The divorce was completed after a number of months of legal fights, tears, and disagreements between the parties. In accordance with James's insistence from the beginning, they went their own ways after dividing their assets in an equitable manner. James discovered a peculiar feeling of serenity, whereas Emily was left in utter disbelief as a result of the breakup. As a result of his decision to leave the city, he abandoned the life that they had constructed together. He made the decision to purchase a little farm on the outskirts of a peaceful town so that he could have a new start. Despite its little size, the farm was ideal for him. He had lots of room to be alone with his thoughts, a few acres of land, and a farmhouse that was warm and inviting. James had a different kinds of joy as a result of his life on the farm. The most of his time was spent looking to his garden, repairing the ancient home, and going for long walks in the forests that were located in the surrounding area. His new existence turned out to be a balm for his soul because of how simple it was. Every once in a while, neighbors would stop by to say hello, or a delivery guy would inquire as to why someone like him would want to live in such a distant location. When he said it, he would grin slightly and remark, "I've had enough of people. I am more content in this manner." The fact that James was by himself did not make him feel lonely. The peace and quiet provided him with the opportunity to contemplate and recover, and the farm provided him with a feeling of purpose. It had been years since he had experienced a sense of freedom. Listeners, I would appreciate it if you could leave your opinions in the comments box below. Additionally, please remember to like, share, and subscribe to this channel.